All right, guys. Happy Friday. Very, very happy Friday indeed, especially because I got to hear Kamala speak again. I just like Kamala Harris speaking. It's just so much mumbo jumbo. She kind of sounds intelligent, but actually says nothing that is intelligible. And I enjoy that. I love that for her. She kind of reminds me of like when your teacher assigns you a book report. They're like 1,500 words and you're feeling good about it and you get to 1,300 words and you're done and you're like, oh man, I got to do 200 words more. Like, what am I going to say here? So you just start throwing words on the page and repeating yourself over and over again. And that was Kamala Harris next to Joe Biden the other night. Take a listen.
This is just an extraordinary testament to the importance of having a president who understands the power of diplomacy and understands the strength that rests in understanding the significance of diplomacy and strengthening alliances. This is an incredible day.
That's me. Type. Diplomacy, the strength of diplomacy. And it's a beautiful, beautiful day. End paper. Turn it in. They come back to you. They say you get a B- because you didn't really say much. And then you go, that happened because I'm a black person. I'm getting this grade. I just love Kamala Harris. I'm almost a Kamala Harris stan. She's just so unexpectedly stupid. But guys, first we have to discuss the fact that her VP potential, Josh Shapiro, are you following the story? Because it's insane. And it is so close to everything that we have been discussing on the show and getting in trouble for. Just really wondering who is in control of our government. Why are so many people elected into positions of power that are doing terrible things behind the scenes? Well, this is a murder story. I mean, a suicide story, because everybody knows that most people, when you commit suicide, stab yourself 20 times. Yeah, hang on, guys. We're going to get into that. But first, I just want to make a plea. Can everybody agree to stop defending, supporting, or explaining away pedophilia? Because that's just been a common theme in America. It's why I'm starting to believe that maybe the pedophiles are in power. Yeah, we're going to talk about a journalist that wrote an article about me that I think is supposed to be a hit piece, but it feels like a hit piece against him. That's what we have coming up on Candace. I don't know, maybe it's me, maybe it's just me, but I feel like it's so easy to not defend or explain away or to endorse in any way pedophilia. Like, I just think that's such an easy layup or sexual perversion. Like, I'm like, this is going to be so easy. I'm going to talk about this topic. And of course, there's going to be no hit pieces about me, because who would write a hit piece when somebody is speaking about somebody who's pedophilic and incestuous? And yet every single time, I mean, when I spoke about Magnus Hirschfeld, a total sexual deviant pervert, absolute pervert. They were like, oh my God, how dare you? Talk about Sigmund Freud. Same thing. I don't understand this. What compels people? Some people say it's identity. They say, oh, it's because this person is black or this person is Jewish. I feel compelled. I've never felt compelled to defend a pedophile on the basis that they're black. I never felt that way. Not a drug dealer because they're black. I'm just like, nope. I really hope that person gets into trouble. I want to make sure that every pedophile is pointed out so we can all come together and condemn it, but not in today's society, you guys. You're not going to believe this. So, we spoke about Jacob Frank this week, and that was an explosive episode. I mean, I think we're already at like 1.2 million views, people that genuinely didn't know about this hidden Frankist history. And of course, the most compelling piece of this, the reason why I brought it up, is because Frankism made its way to America. It is a fact that Louis Brandeis, the first Supreme Court justice, he applauded himself for being the first Jewish Supreme Court justice, was a Frankist. It's on his Wikipedia page. It's not disputed. You can check any history documents. He kept a picture of Ava Frank, who was considered the unholy Mary. She was having sex with her father. They were throwing sexual rituals. I mean, all of this stuff has been going on with elitists for a very long time. Easy layup. I pass the ball. I say, hey, don't defend this guy. Don't defend Jacob Frank. It's so easy not to do it. PJ Grissar over at Forward, because Forward is a magazine, I guess, or a periodical. I don't know what it is. But I threw that ball to him, apparently. I said, layup. He couldn't do it. He missed it. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to PJ Grissar over at Forward. But he said, no, I can't. I got to call Candace names for discussing this topic. What? Are you kidding me? Look at this headline. I'm not kidding. Forward magazine or whatever, Forward. Candace Owens has gone so conspiratorial. She's now citing forgotten Jewish heretics. Like, what are you talking about? And here's the thing that's so amazing, because it's such a psychology game, that they actually don't dispute anything that you say. It's like Snopes, right? When they get to a level where they just hate you for knowing the truth, hate you for speaking about the truth, hate you for spreading the truth, they actually just insult you a bunch of times, and then later, buried way down, they're kind of like, yeah, but she's telling the truth. And that's exactly what my homie who missed the layup, PJ Grissar, did. He starts the article by being like, since her ouster from the DW for peddling anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, right-wing pundit Candace Owens has kept her hot streak going. He then refers to me as a Putin apologist. He goes on to describe it as in a live streamed rant on her YouTube. See, they use these little words like rant because they want to make it seem like they want to sell to their audience the person has fully gone off the rails. So it's like she's a hysterical woman. She's ranting. She's so crazy out of nowhere. In a live streamed rant for her YouTube channel Monday night, Owens said Frank, who believed himself the reincarnation of false messiah Shabbatai Zivi, founded the preferred religion of the elites. Frankists, she insisted, worship the devil and believe that through deception they will inherit the earth. Well, he goes on to say, well, a lot of those claims are new information to me. Owens, who attributed the origins of her discovery to a book on Sigmund Freud and mysticism, exploded a scandalous, deep-cut chapter of Jewish history. Okay, so again, no dispute here. Yes, the book exists. I'm sorry I didn't write it. Actually, a Jewish person wrote the book in which I learned about this movement. And yes, it was because I was looking into Sigmund Freud, who does, in fact, happen to be a person who spent his life creating psychoanalysis to defend pedophiles, right? And you're employing this psychoanalysis here, where you're trying to pretend that I'm crazy because I know the historical information and I presented it to my audiences. So then he goes on to basically say, yeah, Candace is telling the truth. He writes, for the uninitiated, some of what Candace is saying is true. Frank's ministry developed from Sabbatianism, and his disciples did, as Owens said, have sexual rituals. The most infamous was the 1756 affair, where Frankists were said to revel around a naked woman and maybe also have an orgy. Maybe also they had an orgy. Yes, they had orgies. They had homosexual orgies. They had incestuous orgies. They paraded around a naked woman that was Jacob Frank's wife, just to help you clean it up, since you're not entirely sure, PJ, of whether or not you've heard of this before. He then writes, following that scandal, Frank was considered a heretic by most of the Polish Jewish authorities that had until then tolerated the Sabbatian movement. Okay, yeah, so he basically goes on to say that what I have said is completely true, but somehow he feels compelled to write this article about me to try to convince people that I'm crazy. Why? Like, the question really is just, why do people do this? And the answer is because they don't want people thinking. Okay, they don't want people watching the show and then going to buy the book and actually learning what the elites have been up to forever. It's never stopped. There was never a break. There was never a pause in the elites throwing satanic ceremonies. Like I said, you can draw a straight line from Shabbatai, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, don't care, okay, Zivi, all the way to Jacob Frank, to Aleister Crowley. Every century they had their satanic guru, and again, these gurus were being celebrated by the elites. Now, if you were a journalist, you would be interested in that. If you were a real journalist, you would be interested in that and go, oh my gosh, she's uncovering all of this satanic history and she's connecting it to people that have positions of power today. My goodness, this is explosive. But not my boy PJ Grissar over at Forward. He wants this buried, okay? He clearly wants this buried. Here's the thing that I want you guys to recognize, because I love that I have been speaking about all these topics and that you guys have been receptive and wanting to know more about them. And you're asking the same question I did when I was learning all of this, is how could we not have known? And that's because over the last couple of decades, our society, Western society, has become remarkably less and less free. I'm not kidding. Like, actually, if you go back and you discover old clips on TV from the 80s, the early 90s, so much more was said and so much more was presented. And it feels like that was the world pre 9/11. And now we're living in a post 9/11 world where they've recognized that the war, and I'm talking about the elites, have recognized that the war is informational. Right? And the way that they feel that they can defeat any quote unquote conspiracy, which is really just people learning about the truth of how they operate, is to send out reporters to write grimy little hit pieces like this. Because that's what it is. This reporter, by the way, filth, absolute filth. Because why would you do this? Why would you do this if you were not a filthy human being and trying to impose upon the world, or to cover, rather, a filthy psyche? Because that's what it is, a filthy psyche, Frankism, okay? But a long time ago, by the way, speaking about these issues, recognizing these trends, speaking about satanic rituals was mainstream. There's actually an old clip I'm going to show you from Oprah Winfrey. This dates back to 1989, where she was looking into a lot of these Mexican gangs and rapes that were happening. And she was interviewing people because she got quite obsessed in a good way with trying to uncover why there were so many circumstances of child rape. And she came across this woman who said that she was raised in a cult that pretends to be Judaic, like pretends that they are just like normal Torah worshiping Jews, which is what I implied in my episode, is that we have all been infiltrated. Catholics, the Judaic faith, Islam, everybody has been infiltrated. People are pretending to be what they are not. And this woman said, yeah, I was a part of this cult. I was raped when I was a child, and this cult still goes on, and people were pretending to be Jewish, and we're not. She just explicitly said this on Oprah Winfrey Show. I'm going to show you a clip. Take a listen.
My next guest was used also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals and cannibalism. She says her family has been involved in rituals for generations. You come from generations of ritualistic abuse?
Yes, my family has an extensive family tree, and they keep track of who's been involved and who hasn't been involved. And it's gone back to like 1700.
From the outside, you appear to be a nice Jewish girl?
Definitely.
And you all are worshiping the devil inside the home?
Right. There's other Jewish families across the country. It's not just my own family.
So what kinds of things? You don't have to give us the gory details, but what kinds of things went on in the family?
Well, there would be rituals in which babies would be sacrificed, and you would have to, you know...
Whose babies?
There were people who bred babies in their family. The other thing I want to point out, not all Jewish people sacrifice babies. I mean,
no.
That's not a very
difficult thing.
I just want to point that out.
This is the first time I heard of any Jewish people sacrificing babies.
When I was very young, I was forced to participate in that, in which I had to sacrifice an infant.
And the purpose of sacrifice is to what? Is to bring you what? What are you sacrificing for?
For power.
Well, I didn't say it. She said it. Okay. And it's interesting that she says dating back to the 17th century, because when you look into Sabbatianism, the year was 1666. That would be the 17th century, my friends. And she said dating back, and we've kept track of our family line. And yeah, we're not actually Jewish is what she's saying there, right? We're just pretending to be. And in reality, we worship Satan. I don't know. Is it better when she says it? Probably not, by the way. After this episode aired on Oprah, there were a lot of organizations that came out and said that Oprah should not have hosted this woman, that this woman suffers from various psychological disorders. There it is again. The hysterical woman, that she has multiple personalities and that she should just be ignored. Where does that sound familiar? Oh, I know. It was what I was telling you guys about Sigmund Freud. Yeah, let me give you a little more details about that, because I realized I haven't given you guys the name of the guy who looked into this. So it was actually, because as I have said, this is an infiltration into faith. This is not the Jewish people. It was actually a Jewish man. He was Ashkenazi Jewish Harvard guy. His name was Jeffrey Musaf Masson. That's a picture of him. Look at that nice guy. He graduated from Harvard University with a bachelor's degree in 1964. He then graduated with a PhD in honors from Harvard University in 1970. His degrees were in Sanskrit and Indian studies. And then he supported a bunch of fellowships. Well, he then became the project director for the Sigmund Freud archives. And he loved this job. And he was supposed to then go on to be the next director of the Sigmund Freud archives. And so he learned German. He learned to speak German so that he could properly access all of these files. And when he accessed the files, you're not going to believe what he came across. He realized that Sigmund Freud created psychoanalysis to cover for pedophiles. A bunch of women were coming in saying they were being sexually abused. And then Sigmund Freud analyzed them and said, no, actually, you're just attracted to your dad. wow, it sounds remarkably like what's happening to that woman in the Oprah clip. They're just saying she's crazy. Maybe she's just attracted to her dad or something like that, because that's what Sigmund Freud said is actually happening. Well, this guy, Jeffrey Masson, wound up doing a bunch of interviews about this. He thought, oh my gosh, obviously the journalists like me, they're going to want to look into this more. And he learned that no, the journalists are protecting the weird pedos. That's the world that we live in, guys. And so he gave an interview to The New Yorker, and The New Yorker then defamed him, okay? They outwardly, explicitly lied about what he had said, and he then sued them for defamation. And he lost, and then he won in appeals, and then his win was eventually overturned all the way up to the Supreme Court. Cost millions of dollars over a decade of this man trying to get his name back, okay? Trying to show that he was being defamed. The whole press participating in defaming this person who did nothing wrong other than tell the truth. Imagine the shock he must have gone through, recognizing that the entire mainstream media apparatus was working against him as he was trying to expose a pedophile that's still celebrated in all of our school classes. That's just incredible. And like I said, I learned about Sigmund Freud reading in that book by David Bacon about his Kabbalist worship. And that is how I learned about what Frankinism was. And yeah, you guys should get into that, because this just keeps coming up and people keep getting smeared and libeled for trying to point to the fact that it seems like there is a satanic cult that has achieved a lot of power in our society. Well, guess what he did? This wonderful guy, Jeffrey Masson, he still wrote a book referred to as The Assault on Truth, Freud's suppression of the seduction theory, in which he spoke outwardly about what exactly it was that he uncovered. And I want to be very clear, I have not yet read that book. It's on my list, my long list of books to read. I had only learned about him because I was interested in how weird it was that people keep lying about Sigmund Freud and why he created psychoanalysis. And I think we know why. It's because people keep defending pedophiles. So what are they going to do? This is a problem for them, obviously. This is going way too mainstream forward, and people are writing hit pieces about me, and they're going, okay, like her podcast is a little too big. We can't really control what she's saying. The internet is too free, and they're going to have to do something about that, about the fact that all of this buried history is starting to come back up, and too many people are starting to learn, right? When people get too close to the truth must therefore then be shut down. I have an idea about what it is that they're going to do, but I'm going to tell you in just a second. Hang on. I first want to thank one of my sponsors. I told you guys about the Tuttle Twins yesterday. I want to tell you about it again, because it's just remarkably important that we're raising our children to recognize the symptoms of cultural Marxism. And this is a great beginning book. The other books, by the way, they cover cultural Marxism, critical theory, social justice. These are the phrases that we're always talking about on this show, but would you be able to explain what they mean to your kids? Sadly, these aren't topics left only for adults to discuss. Marxist ideas are saturating our society and the schools, the media, and influencing our impressionable kids, which is clearly their objective. Well, I want to show you guys this book. The Tuttle Twins have a brand new book, the 14th in their series, called Tuttle Twins and the Medals of Merit. Ethan and Emily Tuttle encounter strange new rules at their track and field meet that put the strongest athletes at a disadvantage, allowing less skilled athletes to win all the medals. You know how much I love Thomas Sowell. Well, he makes an appearance in the book to teach the twins about the philosophy of Marxism, why it does not work, what it looks like in our day, and how we can help stop it from infecting our society. And by the way, there's a little character in here that's named Candace. I should have flipped to the page, but you got to buy the book so that you can see me, because I'm in this book. Right now, you can get all 14 books, including Medals of Merit, for a special deal at TuttleTwins.com/Candace. The discount for my viewers will be applied at checkout, and you'll pay only $85 for over 750 fully illustrated pages. So please go support them, support your kids, and support The Candace Show. Place your order at TuttleTwins.com/Candace. All right, so what are they going to do? That's the question. This information is becoming a problematic. And what they've been trying to do in the past is they just keep crushing history. This is the reason, by the way, they don't want kids learning how to read. I keep saying this to you guys. Pay attention to the literacy rates. There's a reason they established the Department of Education. It's because the goal is to actually increase children's ego while actually teaching them nothing. right? Make them think they're geniuses. They have 3 degrees in meaningless stuff like gender studies, and actually they can't even read. They couldn't even read a children's book, right? And I think that the reason for that is because they will then become the hoarders of true history, the hoarders of education, and they will lie about history as they routinely do. They're lying about the present. And I think what's eventually going to happen with the internet is they're going to sanitize it, right? And if that sounds like a conspiracy theory to you, you should know that they are already running exercises regarding what would be a pandemic that would happen on the internet where they would be forced to shut everything down. Now, where did I get this conspiracy theory from? Well, I can tell you guys, the World Economic Forum. You got to start paying attention to their little exercises. Now, back in 2019, before COVID hit, did you know that Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security hosted one of these pandemic tabletop exercises? And it was called Event 201. It was the World Economic Forum, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and they basically simulated a COVID virus that they said could potentially spread, and how the government would have to work with private companies and how they would have to save humanity. And then, by golly, guys, you're not going to believe what happened. A year later, COVID hit. I'm going to show you a little piece of that pandemic exercise that came before the real thing hit. Take a listen.
The mission of the Pandemic Emergency Board is to provide recommendations to deal with the major global challenges arising in response to an unfolding pandemic. The board is comprised of highly experienced leaders from business, public health, and civil society.
We could be looking at double the number of cases in 1 week and 16 times as many in a month if we are not able to stop the spread. That would be on the order of 500,000 cases, and it would continue to rise exponentially.
You heard her. Stop the spread before they were saying to slow the spread. They just worked out everything that would happen. And then, like I said, they must have had a crystal ball, because that very next year, COVID hit, you guys, and exactly everything they had planned for, they were able to execute. And so I like to pay attention to these little forums and what they're exercising. And in July of 2021, guys, the World Economic Forum and its partners simulated a global cyber attack. The training exercise, which was held, involved the simulated large-scale cyber attack on a company's supply chain and the real-time response thereto, with the scenario being referred to as a cyber pandemic. And would you believe, guys, what they would have to do to stop a cyber pandemic is they would have to shut off the internet. They just have to shut everything down. Everything would have to be turned off. I mean, they'd have to shut off electricity. Who knows? But they would do this, just to be clear, to keep you safe. You know, they're even talking about how they would vaccinate the internet. So you're not going to have to roll up your sleeves, but you are going to have to let them have access to your tech, everything. They're going to have to crawl it. Listen to me, guys. It's for your safety. Now, if you're thinking that is going to allow them to delete things, to get rid of things, and to essentially control the thing that they desire to control the most, which is the World Wide Web, so that you can't have people like me speaking, well, let me tell you ahead of time, you will be called a conspiracy theorist. Your information will be deemed dangerous. We're going to have to put a little sticky on there. Fact check. Poop. Wrong. No. These people are always here to help. And so I don't want you guys thinking that you should be already considering what to do in the event that they do shut everything down. We saw this even recently when this airport situation happened, and they said there was some computer virus, and this was the reason why they had to ground all flights. In my conspiratorial mind, thank you, I'm calling it a conspiratorial mind, thanks to that forward author. But I thought, wow, are they doing little mini exercises just to kind of see how things would go if they shut off all computer systems? Because so many people spoke out and said it's absolutely impossible that they allowed this to take place because they were all relying on one system. Or are they just trying to see how we would behave so that they could then modify human behavior for when the real thing happens? Like I said, don't think too much. That's not your job. Our job is not to think. They will do the thinking for us. Our job is not to know. They will do the knowing for us. And eventually in the future, I really do believe that the goal is for children not to be able to read so that they are told exactly how things happened all across human history. All right, guys, taking a brief pause here to thank another one of my sponsors, Policy Genius. And you know, it would be unpredictable having a cyber pandemic. And we know that so much of life is unpredictable, but a good life insurance plan gives your family a financial safety net to protect against some of the unknowns. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It makes choosing the right policy for your family easy and quick. Policy Genius helps you easily compare your options from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. Their award-winning agents can even walk you through the process step by step. Policy Genius has no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. They have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid those unnecessary medical exams. So don't put off life insurance. Make it easy with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/Candace or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Candace. Speaking of life insurance, speaking of life in general, speaking of a crazy murder or suicide story. Okay, you guys, Josh Shapiro. I am shooketh to my core. I'm shooketh. I like to say shooketh instead of shaken. Just it sounds scarier. Anyways, so, one of the things that I also got in trouble with the media for last year was suggesting that there could be gangs after I looked into the Diddy case. And what the Diddy case established was what also was established in the Charles Manson case, because this just keeps cropping up, which is that it's very obvious that they have district attorneys and lawyers and police departments that are on the pay of the CIA, essentially just a gang, so that if someone gets murdered, they can just cover it up. Quite literally, they can just cover it up. It doesn't matter because the state is always in control. So I said this and people got in trouble. How dare you peddle conspiracy theories? You mean how dare I read the Diddy docs? How dare I read Tom O'Neill's book about Charles Manson? How dare I go being educated outside of the permissible parameters of education? That's what they actually mean. These are the parameters. We tell you what to think. And if you do any out of the box thinking, we're going to come for you. We're going to come for your life. Well, dare I, because let me tell you, this Josh Shapiro story is crazy. So Josh Shapiro, in case you aren't following him and Kamala's campaign, this person has been thrust into the media spotlight as her #1 pick. Look at him. He looks evil. I think he looks evil. I don't like his face. He looks evil. Maybe I know too much about him. And it's this incredibly crazy suicide story. So I'm gonna walk you through this. On January 26th, 2011, there's a 27-year-old named Ellen Greenberg, a first-grade teacher at Juniata Park Academy. She died in an apartment that she shared with her fiance, Sam Goldberg. Let me show you a picture of her and Sam Goldberg. Look at her. She's so cute. I love her. See, I trust her face. I'm just like, I like this girl. Look at that big smile. Ellen Greenberg, genuinely rest in peace. So what happened was her body was found with a knife in her chest on the floor of the kitchen. And the Philadelphia assistant medical examiner, his name is Marlon Osborne, found 20 stab and slash wounds, half of which were in the back of her neck and her head. So the medical examiner, Marlon Osborne, initially ruled that her death was clearly a homicide, right? Clearly a homicide, noting that a large number of the stab wounds, including 10 to the back of her neck, most people committing suicide, 20 is a lot. And then what happened was something that was quite strange. Police publicly challenged his findings, and he suddenly switched the ruling to a suicide without any further explanation. The death was ruled a suicide, and then the Attorney General, that would be Josh Shapiro, the vice presidential hopeful, backed that up, that it was a suicide when the case landed on his desk, despite the clamor that it was very clearly a homicide. The Greenberg family has since been fighting to have her death ruled back to a homicide for years. And they say there is so much evidence that backs up their claim. Yeah, probably the part where you have 20 stab wounds, including some in your back, that would suggest that maybe you didn't commit suicide. So what actually happened here? Well, this guy Osborne said that he was pressured. He said that there was a campaign by the Philadelphia Police Department, his boss, and a representative from the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office to pressure Osborne into changing his mind and declaring her death a suicide. Ladies and gentlemen, this is some mafia-ish if I have ever read it. Okay, this is how the mafia and the mob operates. So yes, it looks like there is some sort of a gang running in Philadelphia, like there's clearly one running in Hollywood, and like there's clearly one running in DC. Okay, so this girl, it looks to me like she was probably murdered. Okay, and then what happened was whoever murdered her clearly had some connections and called and said, no, we got to clean this up. And so here, by the way, the story gets even crazier. Ellen's parents, seriously, bless them, pray for them. Josh and Sandy Greenberg have been fighting against the city of Philadelphia to change the manner of their daughter's death back to a homicide, right? And the story goes that way back on that night in 2011, Greenberg's fiance, Sam Goldberg, called 911 to report that she was lying on the floor with blood everywhere. But before 911 got there, okay, he told investigators that he left their 6th floor apartment approximately 45 minutes earlier to go to the gym on the building's 1st floor. He claimed that when he came back, the door was locked from the inside with a swing bar lock, and when he couldn't reach Ellen by phone, text, email, or by shouting, he broke open the door and found Ellen's body on the floor of the kitchen. Likely story, okay? It gets even crazier. A source confirmed by a letter from the Goldberg family's attorney to Fish said that at 6:14, Goldberg called his cousin. This is before he called 911. He called his cousin. His cousin's name is Kamian Schwartzman, in a call that lasted for approximately 5 minutes. During the next 7 minutes, Sam missed multiple calls from his uncle, James Schwartzman. But at 6:26 p.m., James Schwartzman tried calling again. Sam answered the phone. And then Kamian and James Schwartzman, both of them are lawyers, were at the apartment building sometime that evening, perhaps as early as 6:34 p.m., before the first responders arrived. Very interesting. Her body was slumped against the kitchen cabinet in a seated position. However, an attorney for Ellen's parents said in a court Tuesday that her body had been moved. So what do you guys think happened here? What do you guys think? Do you buy that this woman stabbed herself, this like young girl with this happy smile across her face stabbed herself 20 plus times to commit suicide? Is that a typical manner of committing suicide? Which, let me guess, I got another theme. Women are always hysterical. We're always hysterical. She must have just been a crazy woman having some psychosis and decided to kill herself in the most violent manner possible. Or somebody had connections. And it turns out that somebody who had connections, which is being heavily implied by Ellen's family, is Schwartzman. Josh Shapiro, the VP would-be hopeful candidate, went to school with Schwartzman's daughter, Kimberly. So Schwartzman arrived on the scene. That's what the family's alleging. He got there first. He got the call. He gets there. He starts calling the shots. Well, he's connected with Josh Shapiro. And Josh Shapiro went to school with his daughter, Kimberly Schwartzman. And Josh has publicly said that he's friends with Schwartzman and her husband. They've donated to his political campaigns. I mean, like I said, this is some mafia stuff if I've ever seen it, okay? And this is, by the way, scary stuff. It is scary stuff to recognize, to insinuate and to recognize that gang members, okay, went on to achieve powerful positions in office. But when you read that book, Chaos, when you read these books I'm telling you about, you will have no question that we are on the side of truth when we talk about this stuff, when we say that there are very clearly sadistic gangs that are running the world, okay? I mean, JFK got shot in broad daylight, but, you know, no, I was just, nobody knows who did that. Nobody knows who did that, guys, still. Well, we're going to see what's going to happen. Now it seems pretty obvious. How scary, by the way, to think that someone could be involved potentially in covering up this murder of this young beautiful girl with her whole life ahead of her, and then could run for vice president, right? Could be seen as a viable vice presidential candidate. That should terrify you. I'm not kidding. That should genuinely terrify you, because a person who gets into office with that kind of power, the fact that Kamala, you don't think she could have accessed that? She knows what it means to be a district attorney. They're all up to the same stuff, okay? These are people that are covering up crimes. They're covering up all sorts of crimes. The entire government apparatus has become corrupt in America, and we have to have the courage to say that if it's ever going to be fixed, it's going to take all of us. All of us. All right, guys, I want to lastly thank my sponsors of the show, American Financing. You guys know I love them. I don't love the economic environment that we're in right now. I don't love that so many people are stressed providing for their families, and it can feel overwhelming. People are putting everyday expenses on credit cards, and it feels like it's only increasing the stress. Well, if you need to find a way out of that never-ending cycle, the answer is to call my friends at American Financing. They're helping people just like you turn things around by using the equity in their homes to pay off high-interest debt. They understand what you're going through. They talk to people in your position every single day. American Financing is saving their borrowers an average of $854 a month, which amounts to about a $10,000 a year raise at work. And they're closing some of these deals in as little as 10 days. If you start today, you may not have to make next month's mortgage payment. There's no better time than right now to turn your situation around. So please call 800-795-1210. That's 800-795-1210. Or to make it easy, you can visit americanfinancing.net/Owens. All right, I got to get into the comment section. I got to see what you guys are saying about all of this. Let's get into the super chats here. This person writes, I have some interesting stuff for you from Father Emmanuel Charles. This is JC. He's a Catholic priest, and he has an interesting take on Christianity and the rise of Hitler. Is there a way I can send the link to the YouTube video? Yes, you can send it to info@CandaceOwens.com. Apparently, Father Emmanuel Charles McCarthy is an American priest, Melkite Catholic Church, as well as a peace activist and an author. Virtual Reviews writes, it'd be so easy to make an AI program to scrub the entire internet of a concept. Also, as a former psych student, I always found it so weird why they focused so much on Freud instead of modern theories of psychology. Yeah, and then when you sort of realize everything that's happening right now and that they're using modern psychology to harm our children, I think they are using modern psychology to inch us ever closer to that their sacrament of pedophilia. Like, that's what I genuinely believe. Then it gets even more terrifying because you recognize that perhaps this satanic faith that the elites follow is being implemented on the entire world, and half people are asleep. They don't even believe in God. And yet these people are worshiping Satan and offering blood and ritual sacrifices in his name. And that's not a question, by the way, that Kabbalists believe in blood sacrifice. That's not a libel. That is nothing other than the truth. You can read it in your own words by finding the work of Eliphas Levi. He's the guy that rendered that first drawing of Baphomet, the transgender deity. When you read his work, I couldn't stomach it for more than 10 pages because it was so dark and demonic. But he speaks extensively about what blood is, like why blood is so important and why you have to sacrifice blood. Terrifying stuff, but it is a reality. These people believed it. And yes, like that woman on Oprah said, it dates back to the 17th century. So I think that woman wasn't hysterical, as Sigmund Freud likes to call us all. Hysterical women, telling the truth about how they were raped. They're all just hysterical, telling the truth about how they were involved in satanic rituals. They're all just hysterical. How long are we going to do that before you think the world's going to wake up? I think the world is waking up right now. This person, Savrix, writes, Aristotle, quote, no man is a slave if better off free, meaning if a group cannot contribute to society, then they are better off a slave to the state. During COVID, you can't run your business, but here's a stimulus check. Yeah, I mean, that is ultimately the goal, and it's working. Unfortunately, the enslavement of humanity is what they are after. Those were the explicit aims and the goals that were laid out, again, dating back to the 17th century. And I cannot state enough that you are just not looking at things in a meaningful way if you're like, oh my God, it's all Catholics. Oh my God, it's the Jews. It's like, no, guys, Satanists hiding in plain sight in positions of power. Sahid writes, if you want to know more about the devils and their motivations, look into a book called The World of Jinns and Devils. Evil jinns want nothing more than to steer you away from the worship of the Creator. I already believe that because I see that everywhere. It's just so obvious that they want us to believe in man, place our faith in man, place our faith in ourselves, and not into God. Not into understanding that actually we are all quite small. And it's sad to see so many people that have been persuaded by their atheistic aims. Edith Rodriguez writes, thank you. Because of you, I will now vote for the first time. You have talked about everything I have known since 9/11. I would like to see what you think about the Catholic Crusades. Bless you all. I think we were lied to about the Catholic Crusades. I know we were lied to about the Catholic Crusades. I know we were lied to about the Spanish Inquisition. I know we were lied to about the reasons that we bombed Nagasaki and just took out at the end so many Catholic cathedrals. I know we were lied to about what we were doing in Vietnam. Henry Kissinger is the devil, 100%. one of many of these little demons. And I say that expected to be a headline. Don't care, built different. May I interest you in a mug? A Standis cup? Head to clubcandace.com if you don't care too and you are built different. Standing up to these thugs in the media. Last couple of comments, you guys, that we've got. Men needed now. I love that. This person's name is Patrick. He writes, where are the lies? I don't see any. Keep revealing the truth, Candace, and keep up the good fight. By the way, speaking of that, make sure you're saving these episodes, because if this blackout comes, that this pandemic, this digital pandemic that they're predicting, they're not going to cause it, guys. They're just predicting it. Then we will all need to make sure that we have this source of information that we can somehow share with one another and buy books. That's why I said I'm creating this book list for everybody to read. I had to go back and get books that they intentionally put out of print. So when you walk into a bookstore, by the way, now, don't mean to rant about this, everything is so shiny and new. Like, you can't even find a book from like the 1980s. It's crazy. Like, everything is new and it's all new age. It's like talking about themes and it's all like a cultural Marxist, never ending tomorrow, as opposed to being like, wait, but what about history? Like, isn't history important? And yeah, history is important. So important that they want to erase it. Rosal AI writes, hi, Candace, what do you think of Trump condemning the killing of 12 Israeli kids, but staying silent about what is happening to the Palestinian kids? I have said 1,000 times that I can't stand that. I don't care who it is. We don't need to use Trump as caricature. I think that it is very wrong when you are valuing the life of one innocent over the other. I don't see how that can be seen as anything other than either political expediency or a form of racial supremacy. It is always sad when innocent children die. And I hope that Trump would agree with that assessment. I hope that, and maybe he has, by the way, I don't follow him on Truth Social. Maybe he has made comments about the Palestinian children that are dying and the preservation of life. But if he hasn't, he needs to equal it out. That's what I would say. He needs to even things out. Ozan writes, I love you, Candace. You're a generational talent. Thank you. I love you right back. And lastly, Intelligent Observer writes, I hope Candace is wrong, because if not, we live in an evil society. Check out Orthodox Christianity. I think you find the truth there. Well, guys, that is all the time that we have for this week. Hey, listen, next week, I'm going away. I need a break. I need to just take a nap or something. But don't worry, I pre-filmed content for you. We've got Dave Smith next week. Okay. We also have Ray J, the rapper. I sat down with Ray J and a trans individual and had a conversation because Ray J was offended by my perspectives on transgenderism. So that's another conversation that I'm bringing to you. And of course, dun, 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 we will be dropping the infamous Candace plus Ye interview that I filmed on a really cheap camera a couple of years ago when we were in the eye of the storm. So there's going to be a lot of fun content next week while I am away and sleeping and resting and probably still having tons of hit pieces written about me and Ye and Ray J and transgenderism and everything. So yeah, it'll be here. I hope to see you next week. Head to locals.com and support the show. Support my independence. Locals.com or CandaceOwens.com. If I don't see you there on Locals, I'm never talking to you again, probably until next week. I'll see you then, guys.